That's what we want right there. Some primitive fishing equipment. It will all ignite. But the birch bark will go. This is a river birch that we have in our area. There are some better species of birch that grow in the farther northern regions. Like when I was in Maine, I think I was using white birch, and it comes off in these huge, big, thick sheets of papery bark. And it's about the best tinder that you could ask for. It ignites so easily. But this is pretty good as well because it has oils in it. It's nice and loose and papery and flowing in the wind, and it allows it to dry pretty quick. But it's the oils in the bark that allow it to burn so easily and so hot, which is nice when you're trying to get your fire going. The dry grasses are not bad tinders. They're actually not my preferred. There's kind of a, I don't know what the scientific term is, but there's this encasement around grass. And unless you bust it up really, really well, it doesn't like to take a spark as easily as you would think. Everybody thinks dry grass. That's the thing. That's the thing. It's not the best thing. It works. It's not bad, and I would take it for sure over nothing else, but it's definitely not my preferred source of tinder. So if I took some of this dry grass right here, out here in the open, hopefully dry enough after all the rain and freezing weather that we've been getting. Gotta bust it up though, or otherwise it doesn't really burn too good. With an open flame, it'll burn okay. Seed heads like this on these weeds, these are good to add to your tinder. Beech trees are fantastic because they hold on to their leaves well into the winter, basically all winter long, until they start sprouting new growth again in the spring. But these leaves are nice and dry because they've been up in the air and in the sunshine. And when you crumple them up, they don't fall apart like typical leaves would that you find in the ground. They stay together in one piece. And it makes a pretty decent tinder bundle, actually. Like if you were to do that with these, let's say, oak leaves that are on the ground, you know, any of this stuff, even if it was dry, you crumple it up and it just kind of falls apart into these tiny little pieces and doesn't stay into a bundle like you would want. It's not easily ignited. This dead tree right here is a tulip poplar tree. And the tulip poplar is just about the best tinder that we have around here. Unfortunately, you have to find it in the right stage of decay. Sometimes it's too far gone. Sometimes it's not gone enough. Sometimes it's wet. Like in this situation right here, it may be dry enough. It's frozen. So this is all wet. That dark color means that it's wet and probably frozen. But if I come up here to the top, this is where I stashed some a while back. It's all frozen solid. So getting this to turn into good quality tinder that ignites easily is going to be difficult at best. Here's some that might be okay. It's been loose and hanging. Maybe like that light color is what we want. Even though this is wet, we could get this to work. It would just take longer. I'd have to process it down, rough it up, tear it into small fine fibers, and then stick it in my pocket for a while as I walk around, hike around looking for my firewood and stuff. And then eventually we'd probably get this going. It's actually not too bad. I'm putting it on my face. My hands are numb and they're in gloves obviously, but I'm putting it on my face to feel if it's got any moisture in it. It actually feels fairly dry. I think we might be able to make this work. Get a little more. Pine straw is not bad. If that's all you got, it'll work. It's not the best tinder, but it'll do. Up off of the ground like this, it's the best. If you get it off of the ground, the top of the ground, sometimes if you're really careful in collecting it, you can pick up a few of the pine needles that are just right on the surface of the ground that have been able to be in the sun a little bit and dry out. But anything underneath is just going to be wet in this situation here for sure. Your situation might be different depending on where you are, but every now and then you can collect enough just by picking tiny little needles off of the ground like that and adding them to your bundle. Freezing. So here's just a hodgepodge combination of all the tinders that I collected. And I'm just gonna toss them underneath here, underneath my little fire lay. There's that tulip poplar, that stuff. We'll see how dry it is. Fluff it up a little bit. That's probably what I'll try to light first. We'll see how that goes. But tulip poplar's still a bit wet, but the birch bark will go. That birch bark burns really good. Sometimes wind is a hindrance. Sometimes it's pretty helpful. Like right now, the wind is feeding that flame, providing it some oxygen, and it's igniting my kindling that I put on top of my tinder. And I don't have to do any work to it. Even though everything's pretty wet, it's pretty wet out just in general. Everything's wet and cold. I'm not having to do any I'm not having to blow on the fire or anything like that to give it some extra oxygen. Good to go. My question for you guys is, what's your go-to natural tinder source in your area? Every place is different. Every place in the world that I've ever been has a really good supply of tinder. You just have to know where to look for it. In Florida, the palmettos inside of the palm trees has this really nice palm fiber fluff. That stuff's fantastic. In the deserts of the Southwest, there's all sorts of really good everything's dry there. It's pretty easy to start fires there, but I'd like to know what your go-to, if you live in a really wet environment, wetter than this, maybe you live in a jungle somewhere, rainforest, let me know what your go-to tinder source is. So here's a tulip poplar branch right here, and this is some really good tinder right there. You see that? Nice light color, really hairy. Looks like blonde hair. That's what we want right there. If I was looking for tinder to start my fire, it's hard to beat that. This actually makes really good cordage too. It's one of the stronger cordages around here. If you needed to make some sort of strang for whatever reason, this would be absolutely perfect right there. Nice strong fibers right there. When woven together, that makes a pretty strong cordage. So here's a bit of that tulip poplar bark that I stripped off of there, and it's a little bit damp. It's not perfectly ready to go as of now, but I can save that. I can put that in my pocket, I can put that in my pack, and I can save that, and eventually it'll dry out, and then I can process it down into a really nice tinder bundle. Okay. So let's say I did need some cordage for whatever reason, making some sort of trap, binding something together, and I don't have a bunch of paracord in my pocket, or I'm just without the supplies that I need. So what I would do, if I need a really nice rope, a really nice piece of cordage, then I would process this way down into really nice, long, thin fibers. But if I just needed something crude and just something really quick and dirty to bind something together, to tie something up, then I would use it just like this right there. It's a little bit damp, and that actually helps in the twisting process. But I would find a long strand like this to start with, right there, and then I would grab it about 2/3. So about a third there, 2/3 there, and the last third there. I'd grab it right there at the upper third, and then I'd fold it over like that. And then what I do, get really close so you can see this right here. Then what I do is I grab it with my index finger and my thumb, and I twist it away from me, and then I twist both of them towards me. And now this one, I twist away from me, and then I twist both of them towards me. Away from me, towards me. And I just keep repeating that process like this. I mean, you could just, if it's just a weak binding that you need just to simply tie something together, then I can just use it literally like that. I can just wrap stuff up with a little bit of bark like that. But if I needed a stronger cordage to really tie something up, like a shelter or whatever, then this is what I would do. And you can make this as big or as small of a diameter of cordage as you like. Just depends on how much you want to put in there. I've sat around fires for a long time making cordage like this. It takes quite a while to make any length of cordage in this fashion, but if you got nothing to do but survive and not die, keep feeding the fire, then this is a good way to pass the time, just making some string for the next time you need some string, fishing line or whatever, some primitive fishing equipment. But as you can see right there, in about a minute, give or take, I've got a few inches of pretty strong cordage right there. And I would just repeat that process over and over and over again. And that right now is really strong. Where I could easily snap this, no problem, right? I could easily break that. Once you've twisted it together and bound it together like that, it becomes incredibly strong. And that is about as good of cordage as you're ever gonna get out here, unless you bring it with you, obviously. I need to add, I mean, obviously this isn't a very long piece of string. If I needed it to be significantly longer, I'm gonna have to start splicing in more pieces. So the way that I do that, this is the skinniest piece right here, my shortest piece that they kind of taper off towards the end, just like in this new one. I'll take that tapered pointy end and I'll lay it in like this right here, with a little bit of it going towards the top. And I'll start twisting that in like so. And I'll lay this down, that tail end, that tag end, I'll lay it in there. And I'll just start twisting those fibers into that cordage. And by doing it like that, it just becomes all one piece and there's no weak link right there. It won't break. And I just keep adding fibers as I go, and I make this thing as long as I can, as long as I need. Yeah? See that? Okay, that'll work. Friends, I really do appreciate you watching. I appreciate you watching my quick tips, survival tips, finding tinder, making cordage. If you like this type of video, please hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Leave a comment, any comment will do. I'd be grateful for each and every single one of those. And until next time, what's the worst that could happen? Let's go on 3.